Her Story, Our Story, 1 hour of power. It's an online free private group for women. There's a huge disconnect between what we go after and what we really want. Let's move forward. Join Her Story, Our Story, 1 hour of power. Do you sometimes feel unfulfilled and confused about your purpose? You don't have to go it alone. Come on over to the No Judgment Zone where you're going to connect with other like minded women from all over the world and receive support from others who have been through similar situations. Everyone has a story. What's your story? Seeking guest speakers. Do you have a story, talent, or ability that you would love to share? We invite you to be our guest. Hello and welcome to Her Story, Our Story. My name is Stephanie Wall. They call me Speaker Stephanie. I am the CEO and founder of Speaker Stephanie LLC and the founder of Her Story, Our Story, 1 hour of power, and the founder of 1 Million Lives Transformed, where we transform lives, relationships, and finances. The goal is for every woman, every person to transform their lives. I particularly super serve those women who've experienced trauma in their lives. Welcome to Her Story, Our Story. Remember, you belong here. You belong there. You belong everywhere. Be sure to shine your light. My name is Stephanie Wall, and I'm certainly getting it all. Come on in.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Her Story, Our Story. My name is Hope Jackson, founder of Always Hope, and my purpose and goal is to help women to unlock what is hidden inside them. I know from experience that sometimes in life when you're going through dark times, you don't realize the purpose that you have inside of you. So my goal is to help you to find it, and just to remind you that no matter what you go through in life, there is always hope.
Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, 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 welcome. Hope, are we ready? This is a special Her Story. So I'm ready. I'm ready.
We're ready.
Girls, we're going to make sure we start everything with decency and order. So I'm going to fall back so you can make sure you pray us in.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for today, Lord Father God. We thank you for waking us up this morning and bringing us to this point in the evening, Lord Father God. For those of us that are on the live show, those of us who will listen, Lord Father God, I just pray that you will receive something that will help you to shift and transform your life. Lord Father God, continue to touch and bless each and every one of us as we go through each and every day, every minute, every second, and every hour. Just continue to lead and guide us in the ways you want us to go. And all these things we ask in your mighty and precious name. Amen.
All right. So, Hope, Sean King says that our stories matter, that they're important, and that the world needs to hear them. So tonight is a really special one because we're going to talk about stories. So you all, before we jump into it, you already heard about who we are. You know, we done told you to welcome to the welcome, and you know that Hope and I are thought leaders who happen to also be speakers. So we are passionate about talking to making sure that our audience, we touch on those topics that mean a lot to the world, that are important to the world, but that really are important to our audiences. So tonight we're going to talk about stories and the importance of those. But tonight we even have another guest tonight. So this is Julie. We're gonna bring Julie up to the stage. Julie, welcome.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good to be here.
Look, Julie, we got some juiciness tonight, you all. So Julie, when I talked to Julie today, Julie said when I contacted her, I was like, Julie, we got a special show. I want you to be on there to check because sometimes Julie be in transit. She might be in the car. I don't know. Would you? Are you one of the people that sometimes take the train?
I take the train. Yeah, I'm on the DC Metro.
So she'd have been like, girl, look, I said, we was good to go. She was like, I'm gonna be at my desk. I was like, yes, Julie, because we have some conversations to talk about. And one of the things that we talked about previously at another time was about our stories, about the fact that we all have stories. And Hope and I, we're always, this is her story, our story, 1 hour of power. So we have the privilege of hearing everyone's stories. Now, anyone that is listening, if you are watching, we want you to go ahead and drop in your questions, put your comments in, give us our flowers. Why are you watching it? Watch while you're watching it right now. So, one of the things that we want to start with, I want to read a quote to you guys. Well, actually, no, I want to tell you this: that something magical happens when people tell their stories. When we, when you hear somebody's story, you know that you're not alone. You know that you're not in a struggle by yourself. You know that it takes courage to tell your story, and it inspires others. And your story will help someone to change their life for the better. And psychology says that sharing our stories can be therapeutic and healing. And we can process our emotions and connect with others when we share our stories. Stories can help us to make sense of our lives. It can also help others to understand us better. And here's a critical data point: keeping your story to yourself can lead to isolation and loneliness. And when we keep our stories to ourselves, we cannot connect with others on a deep level. And this can lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. Now, many people feel like they can't share their story because they're ashamed of what happened to them. And this shame can lead to isolation, depression, eventually suicide. And now, if you feel like you can't share your story or you feel like you need to talk to someone, please reach out for help. And because people care about you and they want to help you. And if you don't have anybody in particular that you can reach out to, call 988, which is a national crisis line. Just dial 988 on your phone and you can find someone to talk to. Now, Liz Murray says that the most powerful stories are those that need to be told, even if they're difficult to do so. So, our guests today, including Hope and I, we're going to share some powerful stories and hopefully they will empower all of you. All right. So, with that, I want to give you some tips. Now, I know that you all know how to share a story, Hope and Julie. But just in case our listeners don't know how to share, like, how can I tell my story? I'm gonna give you guys a few tips. Share from your heart. When you share a story from your heart, you'll be able to connect with others on a deeper level. Your story will be more genuine and more authentic, and people will be able to feel your emotions. Be vulnerable. Now, when I say be vulnerable, I don't want you to touch this story in places that is so deep that you can't even tell the story because you become emotionally overwhelmed with the story. So you got to kind of graze it, but be vulnerable enough that you tell the story and don't skip over the parts. There's the parts the person that's listening really needs to hear. Be brave. Sharing your story takes a lot of courage. You're putting yourself out there, which takes a lot of bravery. And empower others when you share your story. You're also helping others. You're giving them the courage to share their stories and to inspire them to make a difference in the world. So, Hope and Julie, I want you to I've been saying their names, but I want you guys to say your name again. I want you to say, my name is, and then, so my name is Stephanie, and telling my story was hard. And that's it. Either hard, easy, or uneventful. That's your options. It was either easy, hard, or uneventful. Ladies.
Okay, well, my name is Julie Robinson, and sharing my story was hard. What I'll say about it is everybody doesn't have just one story. I think everybody has multiple stories. Or just like a book, we have many chapters in our lives. So some of the chapters may have been told and some of the chapters are still secrets. Um, but you have to be able to free yourself by sharing your story to others. It lightens your load. So it is hard, but it is necessary.
So
Um,
cute.
so yeah, that's definitely key. I like that. Your chapters still may not, they're still in the writing process or the writing phase. That's what it is. So I'm Hope, and telling my story was hard. Um, mostly, mostly because other people around me within my family, like close family members, didn't know everything that I had gone through. So that was the hard part. And really just making myself, as Stephanie talked about, being vulnerable and putting myself out there for people to see that side of me. So I think that was the hard part. But I do believe that it was necessary because it was freeing for me. And by sharing my story has helped others to be able to share their story.
What would you each say was the hard, like, I know you said because so many people didn't know the story, but besides, like, for the very first time, what was one other thing that was the hardest for you to be able to share that story?
For me, it was to get over the shame. Um, the generation that I'm from, it was you don't say nothing. Nothing leaves these four walls. So you carry it for such a long time, and you might hear other people share their stories, um, but you still think it's not okay for you to share yours. So you have to release that from yourself, because when you carry it for such a long time, you cause injury to yourself, you know? I have to speak from my own self. I mean, I suffer from high blood pressure from my 20s, and that's because of years of shame that was carrying. So you got to free yourself. And like I mentioned earlier about, um, the different chapters, you have more than one story to tell. Um, I'm still going through that freeing process, that brave process. So I'm not complete. But once I'm completely free, then there's so many people I'll be able to help.
Well, you said, and let me tell you, listen to what Julie just said. One, she talked about the fact that she had to be brave. She talked about the fact that she had to be vulnerable. And the most important thing she talked about is the fact that she be able to empower, she to help others, to empower others. Because when we take ourselves out of the picture, it makes it easy to put everybody else in it. And it also helps us to see the bigger picture, because when we are focused on our problems, that's all we can see. The problem is the problem, is the problem. As the Dr. Delatorre McNeil says, we have to see it before we see it, or we'll never see it. And which in essence, what he's saying is, with every right where we are right now, our minds got there first, which also means good or bad, right? Good or bad. So that's interesting. So where we are, if we are, you finally you saw yourself in a happier place. You saw yourself, letting go of some stuff, and that helped you to then you saw it, and then you could see it, and now you can see it for other people. That's key. What about you, Hope?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
What was the hardest? Like, what was the most difficult part of sharing your story?
Um, I think again, it's just again, just I guess I've always been a people pleaser. So to put myself out there and to put a story out there that talks about some of the trauma and the things that I went through, I felt like I was exposing myself. And I was exposing myself to a lot of judgment. But once I got past that, then I realized that sharing my story, the most difficult part is just ignoring the comments, I guess, that people had to say. Um, and the other thing I learned is not to tell my story from my wound, but to share it from the scar. Don't share it from the point where you're still healing from it. It has to have been pretty much healed, because if you tell it from that place where you're still healing, it makes it like you said, when you were talking about when you tell the story and you're telling it from a place that you can't even tell it because you're so emotional, it's because you're still healing from it. So don't tell it from that position where it's still a scar. You have to tell it from where it's a wound and it's healed, and it's easier for it to be shared. So that's what I had to learn and get through that piece.
Oh, Hope, you said a word there. Let me tell you, I would just recently, several months ago, though, I was speaking on the global speakers stage. And one of the things that we had to do is everybody that was a speaker had to come in earlier, and we had to have like a practice session. And during that practice session, Dr. Cheryl Wood, who that's her program, was listening to each one of us talk. And there was a couple of people that were telling their story for the first time at that conference, and they were new speakers. And she was critiquing everybody, and we also gave each other flowers, and we also critiqued each other. And one of the things that immediately, there were a couple people that were telling their story, as you say, from the scar and not the wound, and they were having a tough time. So it was the translation wasn't coming across. And one of the things that Dr. Cheryl said was, you cannot get up on this stage practicing your speech, number one, on the audience. You cannot come up on this stage unhealed, trying to help anybody, because you are not helping them when you are not healed. Now, was she saying that you couldn't come on there and share your story? Absolutely not. But what she was saying is that if you can't get through the story, how can you help anybody? And look, let me just give y'all this thing here. It's called peaks and valleys of a story. You take people down, but if you are so in the scar, you took them down in the valley, baby, they down there, they still down the valley. They need to come back up. Have you ever, think about a time you went somewhere and somebody was testifying, whether it be church or somebody was telling a story, and the story was so powerful, but it had you so in your emotions, but they left you right there. There was no, but then I had my come up, but then I came out of that situation. They didn't give you the but then. They didn't turn the page. They left you still on you were down there like, woo. And so literally, I told the one young lady, I said, when we were critiquing, I said, now, she and I talked, I said, listen, you had me so upset. I ready, come on through. I mean, you cannot take people down and leave them there. You have to tell them the come around story. Even if your story is, these terrible things happened to me and I'm still growing. I haven't reached my mountaintop yet, but I am not where I was. They didn't give us none of that. She left us right on down there. I was down there waiting for the rest of the story. Like, oh Lord. I mean, but this is we were literally like this.
You were still left with questions like, okay, what did you do to fix that? What did you do to heal from it? What did you do? It left you questioning.
We have all raise your hand if you could have somebody tell a story, and they tell a story. It was all good. You leaning there like, yeah, but they never get to the end. You like got to be more. You like I be so. Did you like? So did you get the clothes? So did you fix the tire? So did the police come? So did he go to jail? Whatever. You got to go. Listen, in every story, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. You got to give them the end. And the end, if the middle is them down here, the end gotta be, you gotta be like that little train. Choo, 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 choo. What's the little train said? I think I can, I know I can. Mm-hmm. You got to be making your way back up. Y'all, this is key. All right, so wait a minute. So I want to know, what was the biggest relief after sharing your story?
I would say for me, the biggest relief was knowing that I wasn't the only one that knew it anymore. You know, when you keep something in for so long, it's freeing. It's freeing to release that information to somebody else. Now, it's not like you're burdening them with, the story or the information that you're providing to them, but now that somebody can sympathize or even empathize with you because now they totally understand, hey, or they may understand you better. Maybe this is why you didn't go here, or that's why you didn't go there, because now it's freeing. You become lighter. The load is lighter because now it's not that you're putting the burden on another shoulder, but you're exposing it to the world. So you're lighter, you're freer.
I was hitting buttons. Y'all know I was clicking buttons, and I was like, "What's going on here? I can't get us back in the party." But let me tell you this. I almost agree that hope, when you know, it's a I call it a double-edged sword. I felt free. I felt free because the one thing, if you ever been to therapy, and I hope everybody goes to therapy and releases those things that's building up within our mind and our hearts and our bodies. But when you go to a therapist, want you to journal, right? Get that thing out, release it, release the story. And sometimes, how releasing that story means writing it and or saying it or both. I felt so good because no longer because it was no longer a secret, and nobody had control over me because that secret was there. I was so afraid somebody was going to tell that story, so I told it first, releasing myself from it.
I,
So
I, I totally understand that. And then the thing is, you may journal it, but you keep it in your head still. So when you verbalize it, it's freeing because you're actually letting it out your body. When you keep it in your mind and you may written it down, it's still in your mind. So it still can be triggering for you. So you don't get that relief. But when you release things from your mouth, you're letting it out. You're lightening your load. Those words, that breath is so much freeing for you that it does give you that vulnerability. You worry about how other people are gonna view you, but you've just freed yourself because you've released it.
yeah, and you know what? When you just said that, you made me think of something else. When I journaled, and I did journal, then I went through you. Then you go through another thing. What if somebody finds this journal, right? What if they find that I die and they and they find the journal so how about how about you go ahead and share your story now to release somebody else, and the first person you're releasing is yourself. And so all those I'm telling you, it was a fear. It was the release of the fear for me, which false evidence appearing real was thing for me. What about you, Hope?
The biggest relief was the release. I think it was just the release of putting myself out there because I felt like God was pulling at me to release the story, not for my release. Well, it was for my release, but also because he felt like there were other people attached to it, and I was supposed to release them and give them the ability to share their story. So I think that was the biggest relief for me, is just putting it out there. And I had stumbling blocks in the midst of putting it out there, but once it was out there, it didn't just free me, but it freed others. And it's still freeing others. Like, I still get calls today from sharing my story and how it's helping others. So I think that's the big release for me. You're muted.
Of course I am. Of course I am. At least once her story. So tell us a little bit about your story.
So I have suffered with depression ever since I can imagine. I think it started when I was a young child, probably as young as 5 or 6. And just suffering from that depression as I grew up, I isolated myself. And in isolating myself, I made it feel like I was the only person going through whatever it is, everything that I was going through. And it just continued and it trickled on until I was an adult and until I became a mother. And then I experienced postpartum depression, which is a whole nother issue because now not only am I trying to take care of myself, I'm taking care of 2 other people and I'm suffering and I'm in this huge depression. And I was just going through it. I had a heart, not a heart issue, but a heart issue where I didn't feel loved. I had very low self-esteem about myself. If someone said you look beautiful, I couldn't accept the compliment. So the depression, the low self-esteem had affected me so much. I couldn't see the brightness. I couldn't see the light. So it got to a point that I just didn't even want to live anymore. Even after having my kids and having my kids, I just felt like they would have been better off without me. I felt like they could have a better life. So once I got free from that and I realized that that the depression didn't have me, that I could conquer it and that there was a way to get through it and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, come on now, my name is Hope. What other name can inspire you to move forward than the name of Hope and knowing that God had a purpose and a plan for my life? And that scripture was also one of the scriptures that helped me was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, the plans to prosper you, to grow you, not to harm you, and not to hurt you. So I had to make that my mantra and I had to make that my point and to know that there was light at the end of my tunnel. And I've seen it. Like I've had breakthrough, and not to say that I've never gone through anything since, but once I got through that, I was able to share that. Once I healed from that, I could share it to help someone else. So that is a piece of my story.
Can you put the verse Jeremiah 21:8? What you said?
Jeremiah 29:11.
Girl, I messed that all up. Thank goodness I wasn't. Please put that in there, please.
I don't actually have access to put comments, but I'll put it in a private chat and you can copy it.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And so, Julie, tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. In regards to my story, I have still yet to write a book, but it is in the brain thought, so I still have to go through the process. But basically, my story was from about age 4 to about age 8. I was continually molested by a neighbor. And during that time, I was the only child that was really on the block. So it was an older neighbor that my family was very close to. And we were always going over to their house. We would have Thanksgiving together every year, but I couldn't speak it out because it was told to me, this is what you have to do. You have to please men. You can't tell anybody because nobody's going to believe you. And back in that day, I mean, this is from the 70s. So back at that time, that's what you believed. And being at age 4, your mind is still being molded. So to go through that for 4 years, um, it was kind of embedded in my head that, I wasn't here for me. I was here to please. And that's what brought me down the road of, always being a people pleaser, always taking care of others instead of taking care of myself. So I'm still going through the process now of trying to um learn me, learn who Julie is, learn how Julie can be. I can say from that experience, because of the 4 years, after those 4 years, then other girls moved onto my street and the same thing happened to them. So by that time now, I was able to stand up for myself and say, no, this has to stop. And I had to save them from him as well. So, and we try to go through the wife and explaining to the wife what was happening. And it was, oh, he's just playing with you. It's nothing. So, I had to not only save me, but I had to save three other girls from the same trauma that I had went through. And thankfully I was able to do that. And, we were freed of that. And I think more so it was more freeing once the gentleman passed away, because I was able to say, you can no longer harm me, but you no longer have that hold over me because you're gone. So, um, that's, a little part of my story. I have some other stories at one point in time I will share. But the main thing was going through, molestation and knowing that I wasn't the only one that went through it. Um, but we always kept it secret, like even to this day, my parents never knew. Thankfully my mother has passed away, so it's not like I had to tell her. My father's 98 years old now, so he's he's not gonna know. But, my sibling doesn't even know. So it was a hard secret, but I'm able to tell it and I'm able to talk about it because I've healed from it. So it's only that scar. It's no longer a wound. And it's made me stronger.
I love it. And now I was saying to myself, now is the sibling watching tonight? Because the sibling might know now. Okay. All right.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, he's 5 years older than me, but he'd be like, "What, huh? Oh,
Yeah.
okay." He
Yeah.
he breathes over it, but no.
Did so what would you say, both of you, is the thing that helped you to heal? What is the number one thing? The number one and number two. So what is the thing that helped you heal, and what do you continue to use to keep you in that place of healing and growing?
I would say for me, the first thing that was able to heal was that I wasn't the only one. You know, I wasn't the only one that went through it. So I had others at that time to share with. Um, and I would say what continued me to be able to heal from it is to even share that story with my daughter, because that was something I didn't want her to go through. So it was like, in essence, I've always become that protector. So I think to know that, hey, this is something that I went through, and two, I don't have to keep it to myself. I'm able to share with others. So that's a continued heal process, because now it's not buried deep within my head. It's not causing me trauma internally because I kept it to myself.
Hope, what about you?
For me, I'm going to say it was, and I probably have three things. It was counseling, putting in the work. Um, I've been in counseling for so long that I learned how to counsel the counselor and tell them what I thought they wanted to hear. So, but really taking counseling seriously. Prayer, being in the Word of God, and for every lie that I was telling myself, going to God's Word and finding the truth and what God said about me. And the third thing is not isolating myself and surrounding myself with people who could encourage me and to motivate me and just to keep me out of that dark place. And having that circle of friends, that I could go to when I'm having a rough period.
when you told, you shared your story, and somebody gave, some negative energy, right? Somebody said, mm. Like in my case, it was like, I was never told that. Or I even got, because in my case, I was a severe victim of domestic violence. See, there's a bit, like, not abuse, violence. And the person was like, "Ah, I would never let anybody put their hands on me." And it sucked the life out of me and made me feel so super judged till I didn't talk about it for like over a year, like again. What did you do? How did you deal with it?
For me, I dealt with it. So again, most people kind of downplay depression. So when I said, and I written in a book that I remember I went to a New Year's Eve service, and my intent and plan was when I left that service was to go home and take my life. So sharing that story, someone was like, what were you depressed about? Like, life is not that hard. Why would you want to kill yourself? Like, that's just selfish. And again, I kind of dismissed it, and I was like, that's just that person's ignorance, because if they really understood depression, like, you can be so down and so lost and out of it that you don't feel like you have a reason to live. And again, I just trusted God's word, and I just took their lack of knowledge for what depression really is, and them not understanding it, and for them to dismiss it the way that they did. I just left it as they just didn't know. And it was just about ignorance and not them having enough education and knowledge about what depression was or is.
Yeah, I will tell you that one of the things that I've learned as a person, like you, as an author and a speaker and a coach, is that the individuals that make those statements, they are actually saying something else. They're actually saying, wish I was brave enough to tell my story. I wish I was not afraid to tell my story. I too have gone through that. I wish I was brave enough to tell somebody that I too went through it. Or, shh, we don't want anybody to know that we went through that. So now whenever somebody even remotely starts saying any of those things, I no longer feel judged. I now automatically realize they are in need of something. That is a cry for help. So I want you just to remember that whenever somebody, hurt people, bullies were bullied, it's all still holds true for, listen, individuals that are typically that are aggressive and passive aggressive to the if power, they have boundary issues. They need to see a therapist. They have some things they need to address, but you are the person you are the vessel. They talk about how acid does more damage to the vessel, the container it's being held in. Well, unfortunately, they're pouring the acid on you, and now you are now the vessel that contains the acid that they've been pouring out. And so it's important for us to recognize where it's coming from and bat that ball back over to where it came from. Don't catch the ball. What about you, Julie?
For me, it was like, um, I guess two parts, because you had people, or I won't say people, but like a person saying, oh, that person would have never done that too, because I know that person and they're too kind. So, it was the denial of what I said, like my word wasn't valuable. And then it was the others naysayers that were like, oh, you shouldn't tell that to your children, or, oh, um they're going to think differently of you and everything. So it was always either a denial or the shame of it all. Um and for the most part, I just, kind of like you were saying, Stephanie, I just basically shook my head at them because, I know my truth. I knew what had occurred to me in my life, and how I got out of it. So y- I didn't let the naysayers for that situation affect me really, because I knew what was true and I knew what happened to me. So um I think it was just more so of trying to get myself out of that pleasing phase, or through the whole situation it was always, um I think it added to my somewhat fear of male control, because it was always made me feel like I wasn't good enough. So, yeah, counseling helps, therapy helps to build you back up. And so I would say, even right now at my stage in life, I am building myself back up and making myself that better person, so that I'm going to be ready to conquer the world.
Let me tell you what both of you have said it, and I actually put the message in there is that if anybody's ever felt like a people pleaser to type me, I feel like everybody that watches this should be typing me in all caps. And if they don't, they are telling a fib. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. We have all one of the biggest problems in our society is is social media is the biggest stage in the world of people pleasing. We're trying to show the world that we are all of these things. We're trying to prove to the world that we are on our job. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Hope. We are trying to prove to the world that we're so many things. And let me tell you, every person that is, if you're human and you've had birthdays, is my late father-in-law used to say, keep having birthdays. Folks say, I never experienced that. Me used to say, keep having the birthdays, keep having birthdays, right? The one thing I know is that when life is the hardest times in my life, the hardest, I felt like, Lord, maybe, why am I here? What is my purpose? Am I going, I mean, like, what, I'm messing this life thing up. Am I even a good? I mean, I ran the thing down. How, am I a good mother? Am I a good daughter? Am I a good sister? Am I a good, we have got to, it's hard to give yourself grace when you're in the middle. That's what I'm saying. Thank you. It's hard to give yourself grace when you're in the middle of it. Because listen, when you focus on your problem is as big as this room. It surrounds you. And I'm gonna say over and over and over and over and over and over again, therapy, you all. If you have health insurance, your insurance company usually pays for X amount of therapy. And even if you don't have it, then some people pay $100 or more. And if you have insurance and you have to pay out of pocket and give it back to get reimbursed, do what you need to do. But whatever you do, don't keep it inside. It will kill you. I just learned today. I didn't even know it was a such thing. I've heard of, us people dying of broken hearts, but what I didn't know that it was actually called broken heart syndrome. I didn't even know. And she's not on here right now, my sister Pam, because she's celebrating her son who was murdered January 23rd of this year. Our nephew Dante, today is his birthday. And so they're doing like a memorial with her twin grandsons and their mother. So she's doing that right now. And one of the things that, and she won't mind me saying this, because we talk openly about this, and she talks about it on her live, is one of the things that she is fighting is a broken heart. She's fighting to not allow the broken heart to kill her. So I'm telling you that in the midst of that, trying not to allow the broken heart to kill her, she also has to try, she's fighting to not let those feelings that are inside, because that's acid, kill her, spill out onto other people and harm them. Hurt people hurt people.
And can I say something about Pam? Because, and I don't know if people are following her, people are listening to her, but with everything that she has gone through and losing a son, I mean, that is enough to break somebody. And I've seen it break people. But the one thing I've noticed that Pam will continue to do, even in the midst of her own pain, is she pushes through. She continues to encourage and inspire and motivate others. Even when she's having a bad day, she knows when she just needs to stop for a minute and pause and be in that moment, but she doesn't stay there. She continues to get back up. And I think that's what people need to see. And that, I haven't lost a kid, so I don't know what she's feeling, but I have lost things. And when you lose a piece of yourself, the one thing you have to continue to remember to do is to continue to be in that moment, but don't stay there. Get up and keep moving. And that's what she's doing. And I love the fact that she has taken that platform and is helping others to move past their grief and to a healing place, and helping them to understand that it's okay to be down, but don't stay there. Get back up and keep moving. So, and I told Pam this weekend that she continues to inspire me with everything she does. She packed up and moved to Atlanta away from all her family. And if you know her family, you know that's a lot. So if you're not following her, follow her, because I promise you she's going to give you a word, one of her motivational minutes, her prayers, seeing her push each and every day in her workouts, even when she may not feel like it. So Pam, I know you're not listening, you're celebrating Dante's birthday, but I love you, and I am just in awe and inspired with all that you do.
She's going to love that. And thank you for giving her flowers. Because let me tell you something. Ditto on all of that. And let's talk about Pam. This is your night, girl. We're going to be on you for about at least 5 more minutes. Let me tell you that, and she will share some of her journeys, but it's something about when somebody else shares, right? And particularly, you catch them talking about you when you're not in the room. And that is this. I remember when, Pam was like, I swayed, I can't stand this weight. And she was considering getting gastric bypass. She'll tell you her story. She wrote about it. I'm not gossiping. I'm telling you facts. She was considering gastric bypass. She actually went to the doctors, had an appointment. And on her way home, she talked to her friend and coach, Stephanie Jeffries. Stephanie Jeffries was like, wait a minute, come on through. Let's try something else first. And she told her, well, look, why don't you try first meal prepping? So if you try that first, and then if that don't work, I'm all with you if you want to get gastric bypass surgery. So she, went hard because, and here's the deal, sometimes we always need motivation. So her motivation was that our brother had, once again, another family member who had not made it to the age of 70, right? Now the one of our parents, mother or father, and now our brother had perished before the age of 70, like right at 68, right? And so she was like, oh no, I'm going to make it. And the one thing that she knows is that our family, heart disease and obesity run rampant. And so we need to complain about the problem alone or do something about it. So she chose to do something about it. So she started meal prepping, but then she was like, what else can we do? And she's like, I can't exercise. And this time, Jackie and I, we were going hard and doing our own things. You know how we do. We own it. We got our own regiments. We're doing our thing. And she's watching us do ours. And she's frustrated. And so it was like, I was like, well, Pam, we would always talk on the phone and stuff. We were like, well, let's just march in place, right? And so I started telling them about how I was doing the commercials, every commercial. That's when I found out, man, commercials like 5 or 10 minutes. I decided I was going to work out doing the commercials. So that's what we used to do. And so she started out just watching television. She would do the commercials. Then, because that's all she could do. And then she started walking when the commercials came out into the family room and around the pool, around the house. And next thing I know, Pam was kicking butt, walking out the house down to the mailbox. Next thing I know, Pam was out the house, past the mailbox, down the street to the stop sign. Then, Lord, next thing Jackie and I know, Pam talking about she didn't walk down out the house, down to the edge of the street, past the stop sign, around the corner, and it found a park. Baby, it was on and popping then. At that point, she didn't walk up the street, down the corner, around the bend to the park, and now she went to the park every day. And it was her mission to walk to that park. When she couldn't walk, when it wasn't safe, she drove. But she has not stopped walking since, is what I'm trying to tell you. She has shed over 100 pounds. Over 100 pounds. And she is hell-bent on not gaining that weight to that magnitude back ever again. So she gets up every morning, God willing, and the creek don't rise. She up before she up with the Marines. She gonna get up. She may not do 10 things before 10, but I tell you what, 2 things she gonna do, or at least 1 thing, she gonna have got that walk in. So then she was walking every morning, and then, if that wasn't enough, ladies and gentlemen, she decided, I'm gonna now join a gym and I'm gonna get some weight training in. And after she didn't walk, I'm gonna get a little bit more cardio. So let me tell you, motivation comes in so many forms. But why do we share all this with you? The storm came, and I mean a hell of a storm, when you get a phone call that says your son has been murdered and you're in an entire another state. And anybody that knows my sister Pam, and she tells you all the time, she says, she'll tell you right now, she is a self-subscribed people pleaser. She gives her life. It is her love language. So her people pleasing is a part of her character trait. Because Pam's love language is acts of service, gifts. And if you ever did the book Love Language, when you do her love language is service, acts of service, and physical gifts. So if you want to know how to what you can do to support her or how to love on her, is to do for her, and to give her things. And so people do what they like. So that's her love language. Pam texts about 100 people a day. Good morning. Once she gets your phone number and you get on her email thread, you may get. I have a girlfriend that she just knows Pam through me, but she got on that doggone email thread. She said, I get a text message from your sister every day. I said, yes, I do. She tells me. She said, she said, only 2 people text me, my mother and Pam. But this is the deal. That is what Pam has learned, because she has been in a state where she's been depressed. She's had some significant things that happened to her before in her life. And what she has learned is that she will shut down. And she says she wants to never get in that place again. So she does have a therapist. She does talk to her. She realized that she's going to do just the opposite of what she's done in the past. So in the past, she shut all the way down. And this time, she's standing all the way up. We encourage her to share her story far and wide. And social media has helped her greatly. See, look. See that? You see that right there? I'm telling you. So don't think that your subject and your verbs may not agree. You may not know how to tell the story from the beginning to the end. You may even get some people down in the valley and forget to bring them back up to the top, right? But who cares? Your story is can help somebody else. Pam has been experienced the haters just like everybody else that don't, oh, I wouldn't tell a story, so forth and so on. Oh, I'm good. Wish she'd stop talking about it. Listen, if you're under the sound of my voice and you don't want to hear her stories, stop tuning in. I said it. And I'm her sister. So you don't want none of these. That's all I'm saying. All right, I said it. But don't catch these words or these hands. But I'm gonna sure send these prayers because we're not gonna do it. But what we're going to do right here is, and I thank you guys for indulging me because it was important for us to share that with you because somebody somewhere, God's leading this whole thing. Somebody somewhere needed to hear that entire story. So I shared it and we shared it. So in closing, I want each one of you ladies to tell me what you would tell someone that is listening or is going to listen later on. If they're thinking, they has a story, whatever their story is, and they need to release it and they're afraid, what would you tell them?
Well, I'll go first. I would definitely say, and one of the things that I'm learning is you got to get uncomfortable to grow. And the only way you're going to go or excel is to be uncomfortable. But knowing yourself that you're safe because it's going to free you. Um, just like the little analogy I have in my head. If I'm laying in my bed, what makes me move? I move because I'm uncomfortable. So you gotta make a move to grow in your life. So share your story so that not only you're gonna grow, but others are gonna grow from it. And you're gonna take flight and they're gonna take flight with you. So share.
Let me not be like Stephanie and be on mute. But what I want to share with you all is something I wrote in a book. There was a point in my life that I felt stuck. And when I felt stuck, I was sitting at my desk and I made me think, because then my computer got stuck too. And what do you do when your computer gets stuck? You hit Control Alt Delete. And do you know what Control Alt Delete? It resets it. So when you are in a place that you feel like you can't move from and you're stuck, hit Control Alt Delete. Control the things you have control over is how you react to something. Make alternate decisions, just like Stephanie talked about. When you're watching the commercials or TV, get up and march in place. That's doing something different. And then delete the things in your life that no longer serve you purpose. That way you can move on. And you have to continue to do that each and every day. You got to hit Control Alt Delete and learn to recognize the things that you have control over and the things you don't. And just move forward and stop doing the same things over and over again so that you're in the same place. You got to do something different to get someplace different. And typically it starts with your mind. You got to change your mindset. If you don't change your mindset, the rest of you can't move. So that's my word for you is hit Control Alt Delete to move past that place of being stuck.
Well, I'm going to tell you all this, and I said it earlier. Dr. Delatoro McNeil says, look, you have to see it before you see it, or you will never see it. And he talks about the fact that where we are in our lives, our minds got there first. So whatever life that we want for ourselves, we have to first see ourselves in that life. In order to get the life that we want, we have to be willing to let go of the past. And in order to let go of the past or even the current situation, we have to be willing to let go of the story. And in order to let go of the story, you have to first acknowledge the story. And sometimes, and quite often, and quite frankly, in order to release the story, you have to verbalize it. Now, that does not mean tell everybody your business, and everybody is not qualified to hear your story. But what needs to happen, in addition to writing it and getting it out of your head and your heart and release that trauma, and go see a therapist. But what happens is when you share your story, like we've been sharing our stories, you don't have to look like what you're going through. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to not look like what you're going through and then share your story, because it will have a greater impact. So it has been Her Story, Our Story, 1 hour of power. Tonight was a special edition. It was about when we tell our stories. I'm going to ask you to free yourself up, because psychology says that when we hold that thing in, that it does more harm to the vessel that it's in. So release your story, because your story is somebody else's medicine. God bless you. Peace and blessings. See you next week. Same place, same time. It's been Dr. Stephanie Wall, Speaker Stephanie. Shine your light, because that light is God's blessing to the world. And if you don't shine your light, the people that the intended targets that were supposed to get the blessings won't receive the blessings. So be sure to shine your light. See you guys soon.